a collection of birds and then nature scenes and the comet, a couple of Lake Ontario shots. My bigger images will be Lake Ontario and then these fall shots. And then I have some intermediate and smaller ones that are mainly birds and animals. Well, I did include my cardinal in the snow this year.
Well, of course. I mean, how many copies of that have you sold? Do you have any idea how many you've sold?
I don't know. It's probably the best-selling one that I've taken, and it probably took me 3 years to take it because we have a tree right outside, and when it would snow heavily, I would be sitting in that room waiting for the snow to pile up, and then opening the window because I didn't want to shoot through a window and degrade the image. And then if it wasn't windy and the snow would pile up and a cardinal would land in the right position, I could get the shot. And that happened once in probably 3 years.
It's a great image. I love seeing that, and the people always love seeing that photograph. It's great. Now tell me about the comet. Is that the one that we just had recently this summer?
It is. That's Comet Neowise, or the COVID comet, depending on your perspective. And I took that down. Our house is right near Lake Ontario, so I went down to the beach just as it was getting dark enough that I thought I could see the comet, but I wanted to have enough light that I would be able to get a little bit of the beach and the water and the environment around there. So when I got down there to take it, I couldn't see a thing, but I brought my binoculars because I heard that you may not be able to see it with the naked eye. Used the binoculars to find it, had my long lens, zoomed in on it, found it, and then backed off and included the foreground of the reflection in Lake Ontario with the comet hovering above it. And of course, took a bunch to make sure I got the exposure right.
Congratulations on doing that. I looked for it several times both when it was in the morning and then also when it was out here at night, and I couldn't find it either time. I never did see it, even with binoculars.
It's very hard to do. I had read that if you hold your hand at the horizon, and I think it was go up 2.5 hands, it should be about there in the direction that it said, and I think kind of north, maybe a little northwest. So I did that and then found it with my binoculars, but the camera is more sensitive than my eye, so I was able to, with a longer exposure, catch it, and I had to make sure I kept it under about 20 seconds so the stars wouldn't move. Ended up working, and I got the comet. The comet stands still, so you have a little bit of time to mess around, unlike when you're taking a full moon rising shot. It moves pretty rapidly, so you have to move it along, but the comet you have some time to play around with.
And then you have that one with the trees. Is that some intentional camera movement you did, or what was your technique?
It is. Yeah, I have, like every other photographer, fall is a great time to shoot, but my favorite shots are fall reflections, and I tend to do extremely well-focused, smooth reflections of the fall. And this year I ended up kind of boring myself with taking the same shots over and over again as much as I like them, and decided I'd been working with camera movement for a while, mainly in the winter, trying to capture the sense of winter without the necessarily getting the detail of the snow and everything. So I decided to try that for the fall and give the feeling of the trees and the environment and the color without doing the kind of hyper realistic fall shots that I usually take. And it gives the sense of fall without the detail of it. And this one is slightly more clear exactly what it is. The other one I'm going to be showing is some clear dark tree trunks with a lot of color behind it. But it gives you the feeling of the fall color in a kind of a different way.
Yeah, kind of an abstract way. I like that. But, you're a great photographer, Clyde. I always enjoy seeing your work.
Appreciate that, Carl. I always love seeing everybody else's work there too.
I'm going to have kind of a special selection of not just recently taken fall images, but maybe images from year round, maybe a couple of popular locations in the Rochester or Genesee Valley area. And of course, my main interest, my main focus is landscapes and nature related subjects. And during the holiday, I like to have pictures create an emotional response in people that they'll find inviting. I haven't completely picked the images, all of them, and I'm going to put in there, but I particularly look forward to doing this show because it gives me a chance to pick the ones that I think people are going to be moved by the most.
Well, I like the one that you picked out that you sent me called Oxbow Outlet.
Oxbow Lake is not very far from my family's camp. We've had a camp in the lower Adirondacks for this coming year. It'll be 50 years that we've had this camp. And Oxbow Lake and Oxbow Lake Outlet are only about 15 minutes from our camp. And so for many, many years, I've been visiting Oxbow Lake, and there's a particular location where you can take pictures of what they call the Oxbow Lake Outlet. And I've got a whole series of pictures now that of that location, and it's very classic Adirondack. I've got a lot taken from that spot. So
one taken this year?
I believe that was last year. Well, one of the reasons that I wanted to include it in the show is I've been exploring more and more some of the things I can do with my photographs that will create almost, I think it's called the Hudson Valley or Hudson River School of Painting, a famous style of painting that shows wilderness settings in a very dramatic light. I tend to study a lot of those in some of the art books and things like that, and not try to copy them, but maybe try to be influenced by the way that the painters have used light and see if I can actually create some of that through my photography. And this particular image of Oxbow Outlet, I think I've in my mind, I've created the atmosphere that I want to, that follows along those lines of, quite often there's a lot of darker shading. You don't bring out the shadows as much. You have drama. In this particular day I was there, it was a rainy day. It was raining quite hard when I took that picture, but it muted a lot of the scene to begin with because of the heavy rain. And then, playing around in the post-processing in Adobe Lightroom, I was able to give it to even more of an effect that I think is classic Adirondack. So I just really like it. And the people I've, friends and family and others that I've shown it to have agreed with me that it just is, again, classic Adirondack. The more I can make my photographs without a lot of manipulation, the more I can make them look like a true piece of art, whether it's photographic art or a painted piece. I think the more successful I am just with my style. And this particular image I really, really like.
Well, the plan is to try something new. Usually most of my photos that I've shown have been realistic and just as I saw them, or maybe enhanced a little, but basically as they were seen. And now this time I decided to play around and do something different, maybe go for a little painterly style, add a watercolor overlay or oil, an antiquing, pen and ink, something a little different, something that I thought people might find interesting.
What type of software are you using to do that? Are you doing Photoshop, or you have a plugin, or what?
It's what's doing the overlay. I start with Lightroom always, and then I shift over to Smart Photo, which has a lot of artistic options, and that's where I play around and try 47 different kinds of variations, and then decide which one I like.
That's all what the end result is that you like. That with the
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So where was that bicycle? Where was it? It looks like it's hanging in midair there. Where did you find that?
It's on a pole, actually. It's not. It's at the Rochester Public Market, and I walked under that bike dozens and dozens of times. Never saw it. because you're all focused on finding your fruits and vegetables and your flowers, and you walk right into the main part, that first shed, that open shed, and you're all the vendors, and that's what you're looking at. People don't look up, or at least I didn't. And I must have been there, for years and never saw that bike. Finally looked up and there it was, just up in midair.
That is such a cool photo, and I like that effect that you put on it. It really came out nice. I like it. I'm looking forward to seeing what the whole show when you get them all put up there. I like the other samples you sent me too. They're all interesting. So this is going to be a fun show.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and each one is different. I didn't want to do the same theme on each one. I thought, well, a little watercolor here, a little oil there, a little antique someplace else, and see what. And the bike seemed to lend itself to the antiquing.
For the holiday show, a sample of what you see on the wall, the black and white pictures behind me. I'm doing 5 pictures for the holiday show from this collection of trees that I've taken while in the woods. The name of our show at State of the Art is called Close to Home, and in Fields and Forests, and you can see it at soagithica.org. So if you go to our website and you look, you'll see there's work of Susan C. Larkin and Francis Fawcett. And you look at Susan C. Larkin, you'll see the entire show that I have at State of the Art right now. This is one of the pictures. This is called Log Fragment. Every one of the pictures I took for this exhibit is in walking distance of my house. It's not, we don't all own all the land, but my neighbors do. And walking through the woods on Baylor Road, the hill in Caroline, which is east of Ithaca. And that's what we did. That's responding to the pandemic. And some people know from Image City that I have spent a lot of years taking pictures of seed pods and some flowers a little bit, but a lot of close-ups of seed pods. So how come I did trees? And one of the pictures that I was showing you before in screen share showed a little piece of a log fragment that I'm walking through the woods and I saw it and I said, "Phew, you can really do a picture of that." So I did, and I just held on to it. And then another, and I held on to that. And then somehow, as we started thinking about, seriously thinking, the last year, the last half year, it's your turn, you better get going. There it was. There were the trees. The trees were waiting. The trees had always been there. We've lived in the same house for almost 50 years. I've made a book about it, Baylor Road, 50 years, 48 years in the same place. And that now I am paying attention to trees. I'm also reading and listening to The Overstory by Richard Powers, which is amazing, big, huge book, fiction about trees and people and reactions to trees. And I just keep paying more and more and more attention to the trees that many of them were there when we came, and they're going to be there long after we leave. And unless you cut them down, they live a very long time. Not all of them, but like oak, and we have a giant oak in our woods. And I'm reading that an oak, I'm afraid to say this because maybe it's not true. Let's just say 900 years, we're approaching maybe. An oak lives an incredible long time. And it's the only tree that I remember from all the places I've lived, which aren't that many. In Rochester, I grew up on Oak Ridge Drive. And in Oak Ridge Drive, guess what? It's on a ridge of oaks. Behind the house is an oak tree, was an oak tree. And I bet you it's still there. And it was there when they built the house. It wasn't cut down to build a house. And if I'm right about 900 years, it's incredible how long that tree has been there already, since before this country was started. So we have lots to learn about trees. The thing about my style of taking pictures, focus stacking, in this collection, some pictures are not focus stacked because I also take photography at Tompkins Cortland Community College, which I've been doing since I retired from teaching 5th grade. And so for many years, I take photography every single semester. And the challenge for this last winter, was to learn how to walk around with my Sony, which is not as heavy as the Canon, and with hand warmers in my pocket, which I haven't used before, to learn how to walk around outside without a tripod. I tremble when I say that. How can Susan Larkin walk around without a tripod? But I did, and I took pictures, and I tried to make something of snow, which in the screen share you saw, I have my logs in the snow. But spring came, and I'm still walking around, and a friend showed me a new way you can focus stack with a Sony and a remote. And you can put the Sony camera on a tripod and not touching the camera, take a picture with a remote, and then move the lens just a little to focus in just a little bit more, but you don't touch it. The remote does it. Click, 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 move the lens, take a picture. So do that for about 6 pictures. That way, when you get it back, if you want to move, maybe take a couple and put them together, you can get as much focus as you want. It's just a great thing to have, to be able to do that. And then since I can, I don't always have to, if that makes any sense.
So the one that you call intertwined, I assume those trees look like they were having a little hug going there when you found it, huh?
It's probably maybe 1.5 miles away from my house. And a whole series of pictures in this exhibit, and they will be in April when I come back to Image City with more, will show my discovery of a series of trees that were once a barbed wire fence, and how the trees have reacted and grown over the barbed wire and made all sorts of incredible sculptures, but responding to stress and keep on growing. I found those trees, and they're sugar maples. My neighbors later told me about it. I'm also in the overstory reading more and more about how trees connect. So I wanted my neighbor to tell me that in intertwined, in that picture, that the place where they're touching is that they have joined. And he said, you wouldn't know unless you cut it apart, which of course you're not going to do. So sometimes it's just an accident, but sometimes they fuse. And trees also fuse in their roots often. Sometimes a tree can fuse with another tree that's not even the same species. How trees talk to each other is, it's, as I said, I'm just a tiny beginner in watching these things.
The whole show is going to be high key flowers that I've taken from around my house. So what I basically do in the April, May timeframe is go out and cut flowers, bring them in the house, put up in a little, I got this little white box basically with a couple LED lights. And so I shoot high key with a macro lens.
So you raise your own poppies in the backyard, huh?
I do have a couple of poppies. As a matter of fact, I just went out and bought some more poppies, from Denmark or something. I just planted them a couple of days ago. So I have some different colors, but I've got an orange one in the backyard, which I'm showing in the show, in the photos, and I rather the depth of field in that. So I usually take 3 pictures and just kind of fill in where it's out of focus.
My whole show, the COVID situation really set me back photography wise this year. I had a couple of trips planned and they were all canceled. So I ended up going up to the Adirondacks and spending a couple of weeks up there, and everything I'm putting in this show is from the Adirondacks, fall foliage. And
Don, tell me about that beautiful photograph you call Morning Glory.
That's from Racket Lake. I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go there, and it was pouring rain and a terrible forecast for weather. And the whole way there, I kept saying, why am I doing this? Just as I got there, it stopped raining. The sun came out and exploded in orange and red, and without a doubt, the nicest sunrise I've ever seen. If you're not there, you don't catch it.
That's right. I think that's the old saying is F8 and be there, right? So you were there, huh?
Yeah.
Man, that is nice. That's Racket Lake, did you say?
Yeah.
Well, that is really pretty. I like that area. So you stayed at Racket Lake, I'll bet. Which hotel did you stay in?
That might have been Shaheen's, I think.
Shaheen's, yeah. Shaheen's is probably the cleanest little motel I've ever stayed in, in Tupper Lake. Yeah.
I actually like it there. I stayed a couple of places. I was there, and then I was up in Lake Placid for a week also.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the Tupper Lake area a little better, I think.
Yeah, now they finished all that road construction through the middle of Tupper Lake. God, it was torn up for several years there. It was a mess, but Shaheen's, interestingly enough, I don't know if you've ever talked to the people that run it, but their name is not Shaheen. They, they bought the Shaheen Motel from the Shaheen family, and they just kept the name.
They're a hardworking couple.
Well, they
It
are.
was just the two of them running the whole place when I was there because of the COVID situation.
And that's the way it was before the COVID. It's the two of them cleaning and running everything, and I mean they really are, and they're fastidious about keeping everything just spotless. I
Yeah.
always enjoyed staying there, and they're just really nice people.